Urgent work to get protective equipment to frontline health and care staff.
As one shipment arrives in Scotland, another is due later, but ministers admit the task is challenging.
Supply in some areas, particularly gowns and certain types of masks and aprons, is in short supply at the moment, and that must be an extremely anxious time for people working on the front line.
A warning that the number of people who've died in care homes from coronavirus could be higher than official figures show. Because the Duke of Sussex says he is incredibly proud of the British public's response to the pandemic and hopes that the selflessness shown in the UK will continue after the crisis is over.
He's done an interview in a podcast called Declassified, and Prince Harry thanked NHS workers and volunteers. He also praised Captain Tom, who's raised now more than £25 million for NHS charities. It's just astonishing. Every morning you wake up and you look at the news and the money's going up and up and up. What a remarkable story that is.
Wonderful story, yeah. It's the bit of cheer that we all needed. And we've touched on the story that's on the front of the Sunday Times, talking about ministers planning for schools to reopen in 3 weeks' time. Now, some non-essential shops, including clothes stores and garden centres, well, they could be allowed to reopen. Elsewhere in the picture, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards performing in their homes for the One World Together concert that we've been talking about this morning. That took place last night. Full highlights of that on BBC One tonight.
Front page of the Mirror this morning says 500 doctors have warned that oxygen supplies for coronavirus patients are falling worryingly low. It says frontline medics fear the worst case scenario would see hospitals run out entirely, and this of course on the back of the controversy over a lack of supply of personal protection equipment as well.
Well, the Observer reports on how so-called lockdown shaming has seen police called to settle neighbourhood feuds during the pandemic.
And online, most read on the BBC News website this morning is the news that Captain Tom is to be the guest of honour at the opening of a new NHS Nightingale Hospital in Harrogate. He will appear via video link after raising more than £25 million for the NHS. And actually, it's worth mentioning the fact that he's made the inside pages as well this morning, perhaps not surprisingly. He's everywhere. Amazing. He has gone straight to the top of the UK iTunes chart after his single was released just after one day. I think this was something that this programme organised, wasn't it, and brought together Michael Ball singing You'll Never Walk Alone alongside the NHS staff choir and Captain Tom, of course. That's going to raise more money to add to his already enormous total for the NHS, which is just the most remarkable achievement.
It's just incredible when that number gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It really, it's a wonderful story. Let me show you this, though, because our cup of tea could be under threat, according to the paper this morning.
Say that.
It suggests that the virus and lockdowns in the world's biggest tea-producing regions are threatening global supplies. So it means that the cost could rise, as is always the case. So first it was things like loo roll, now it could be tea, and they're seeing a lot of suggestions that major tea producers in India, Sri Lanka and Malaysia are all under threat, and therefore it could push up the price pretty significantly as a result. How many million cups of tea do you reckon we consume in the UK each day?
Each day? 200?
How many? 200?
200 million. Not 200. Full stop.
That's just me and you. 100 million cups of tea in the UK every day.
OK.
That's incredible.
So some people aren't drinking quite as much tea as I am in that case.
And it's up sharply after lockdown, because that's all you do. You wander around the kitchen, you either look at what's in the fridge or you make a cup of tea.
Drink tea until you get to the point where you're officially allowed to have wine.
That's true.
It's kind of how it's working at the moment, isn't it? And a story about, because we're going to talk about vaccines later. There's been a lot of talk this week about potential vaccines being made available, in particular this one that's been developed in Oxford, where they're going to start producing doses of vaccine already. But they're looking at llamas now. Yeah,
this is a great story, suggesting that, well, they've tried the usual mice and rats in labs, but now they're looking for new treatments. And apparently it is the turn of the lab llama, and they're using antibodies that are found in llama blood to help neutralise the virus that's responsible for Covid-19, it says. So they're really throwing everything at this to try and find out. It was originally used in HIV research, they say, and the antibodies have proved effective in combating a wide range of viruses. So who knew that a llama could be so useful.
Science is working at such high speed at the moment, isn't it, to kind of keep track of all of this?
Well, we start with, obviously, the fact that football across the UK is on pause because of the pandemic. But one Premier League club owner fears that clubs across the country could go out of business. Brighton's Tony Bloom was asked if he would want a salary cap introduced after a report last year found that Premier League clubs made £4.8 billion last season, but they spent almost 60% of that on players' salaries.
There are millions of people who may be feeling vulnerable right now, whether it's having health problems like Frank, being pregnant or elderly. It's no wonder then that demand for home delivery slots has gone through the roof. 5 a.m. and the online orders are being picked. Sainsbury's have added extra hours, extra workers and hundreds of vans to ramp up capacity. They're increasing their online slots by 76%. And it's a similar story at our other big grocers, all coming up with ways to boost supply, including more click and collect. Even so, all of this is never going to be enough.